Hi, it's Danny Becker. I've got a web channel looking at the wisdom of Jesus in the gospel and the parables. We think that our religion is our relationship with God, just how we're doing and how God sees us, and whether or not we're acceptable to God or not. Um, we think of that as being religion. Um, a lot of people do anyway. But let's look at our relationships because we want a better relationship with God, and He says, "Hey, you got to have good relationships with my offspring, with my other children as well, with your brothers and sisters." So much about the gospel is really about trying to make these relationships that we have better. For example, we have our relationships with God, personal relationships with ourselves. We have relationships with our family, and we have relationships that are social and everybody else outside of our inner circle. And I would venture to say that if we if our social relationships, if we're permitted, if we permit lies on a regular, if we permit manipulation, if we permit inequality or injustice on a social level, how can we expect that this damage to our relationships on a social level won't affect our family relationships and our relationships with God? Of course they will. When we look at some of the advice that Jesus says, turn the other cheek, take up your cross, agree with your adversary while you're in the way, treat others the way that you would want to be treated, establish roles of leadership and take turns, take turns, compromise. We're supposed to compromise in our relationships. How about that? And everybody thinks, well, my relationship with God and myself, oh, I'm not permitted to compromise with God. Doesn't compromise. Let me remind you, God compromised 3 or 4 times with Abraham about whether or not he would punish a city uh, for their wrongdoings, and Abraham talked God down to 10 people. If we could find 10 righteous people, God would not punish that punish that punish that people. At any rate, when we look at this turning the other cheek or compromising or negotiating or talking and communicating and listening, we're really permitting the other person to be treated the way we would want to be treated. So we give the other person that voice and listen to them. So much about the teaching in the Bible is to help us have better relationships. Now he says a man's enemies shall be those of his own household. Now think about this: father against son, son against father, mother against daughter, daughter-in-law against mother-in-law, mother-in-law against daughter-in-law. What do you suppose the mother-in-law and the daughter-in-law are fighting over if it's not a place in the son's heart? The son is getting torn every which way, and it's important that he takes the initiative to try to make his home a peaceful place, if he can at all. And it's important to him to set those examples, to turn the other cheek, to take up his cross, to agree with the adversary. We think about those turning the other cheek as dealing with our enemies. Let's look at them as if turning the other cheek was to deal with our personal family members. Turn the other cheek, take a hit, and forgive. Forgive wherever possible, because the important thing is to keep the family together. We cannot suffer in one area as a society and think that our families are going to hold together. We've got to have some standards of acceptable behavior of each other, but of politicians, of business people, how we do business, how we treat each other socially. You cannot escape uh, repercussions on their family if you let your social um, world around you um, slide into disrespect and not caring for each other. It's Danny Bag. Like, subscribe, or comment if you will. Thank you very much for your time.